Welcome to the Non-Reader's Digest, where we transform the best articles and essays into quick, compelling stories. No fluff, just the good stuff.
Okay, so get this. A watch, tied up in legal battles for like a decade, could be worth millions, and it belonged to, wait for it, John Lennon. A Patek Philippe, $24.99.
Yeah, it's a story that really grabs you, not just some expensive family treasure. This was on John Lennon's wrist. It's a window into, I don't know, his life, his relationship with Yoko Ono, and how this watch took a journey almost as legendary as its owner.
We've got news articles about a recent court case,
Yeah.
an interview with the watch's current owner, and even like this in-depth investigation from a watch blog. Quite a mix of sources, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Each one gives us a slightly different angle on this whole story. It's tangled.
Okay, so we all know John Lennon is a Beatle, peace activist, cultural icon, but did you know he was a watch guy?
Yeah, well, he collected all sorts of things. Guitars, real estate, even like Egyptian artifacts. But this Patek Philippe, this was seemingly his only wristwatch, which makes it even more interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just any Patek, a $24.99. So for those of us who aren't watch experts, what makes this model so special? I've heard it called the Holy Grail for collectors.
Well, imagine a tiny machine on your wrist, right? Super complicated. It tells time, but also tracks the day, month, even phases of the moon, all automatically adjusted for leap years.
Right.
That's the $24.99 perpetual calendar chronograph. It's a feat of engineering, like a mechanical microcomputer, they call it.
So not just looks, the brains behind it all make it so valuable.
Exactly. And you have to think about the history. Patek Philippe, they only made a limited number of these from 1952 to 1985, making them super rare, each one a masterpiece.
Now, this specific $24.99 was Yoko Ono's 40th birthday gift to John Lennon back in 1980. She got it from Tiffany & Co. in New York.
Yeah, talk about a gift. And not just any $24.99. This one has a double stamp dial, which means both the Patek Philippe and Tiffany & Co. logos are there, making it, even more desirable to collectors, like finding a first edition book signed by the author.
And to top it off, Yoko had an inscription engraved on the back. A loving inscription. We'll get to what it says later, but just knowing it's there.
Yeah, it adds a whole other dimension to it. It wasn't just some luxury item, but a personal gift, sentimental value. Every object has a story, a human connection.
Here's where things get interesting. After Lennon's death, the watch disappeared. Yoko didn't even realize it was missing for over a decade. It resurfaces in 2014 when an Italian collector takes it to Christie's in Geneva for appraisal. How does a watch go from a locked cupboard in the Dakota to a Geneva auction house?
It's a mystery, right? And like all good mysteries, there's a twist. Yoko Ono's former driver, a guy named Koral Karsan, is suspected of stealing the watch back in 2005.
Hold on, are we talking inside job? This is movie-level stuff.
Well, so Karsan worked for Ono for 10 years, but get this, in 2006, he actually threatened her with extortion, claimed she'd mistreated him, demanding money. The watch theft only came to light years later during these legal battles.
So a trusted employee might have betrayed that trust. Gone with a priceless, deeply personal item.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about human relationships, doesn't it?
So once it's gone, where'd it go? Seems like Turkey, where Karsan was deported, to Germany, then finally that Italian collector we talked about.
Yeah, so many places. Passed through several hands, including a now defunct German auction house called Auctionata, and their involvement in the sale raised legal questions, even contributing to their bankruptcy.
This watch leaves intrigue everywhere it goes. What about the Italian collector? I hear he's saying he bought it legally, had no clue it was stolen.
Yeah, he's called Mr. A in the documents. He insists he made a legitimate purchase, which raises a question. How responsible are buyers for making sure what they're getting is legit? Especially something like this, so valuable.
Makes you wonder, did he do his homework? This isn't like buying a used car, right?
That's what the courts had to figure out, you see. Yoko Ono and Mr. A ended up in this huge legal fight in Switzerland, each saying they owned the watch. Appeals, Christie's gets involved, trying to claim a stolen item that wasn't reported missing right away.
Tangled web indeed. And remember, Mr. A says he did nothing wrong. We have excerpts from a recent interview with his son, talks about the impact on their family.
Oh, right. We have to remember there are people on all sides of this. Mr. A says he made a fair purchase, and he's frustrated financially, emotionally. He even said that if Yoko Ono wins and sells the watch, he hopes she donates the money.
Wow. Imagine this watch, for a good cause.
Makes you think about these objects, right? How their value can be used. Collection, auction, or maybe a cause.
But after all that back and forth, the Swiss Supreme Court, they made a ruling just recently. They sided with Yoko Ono. She's the rightful owner. Watch goes back to her.
Huge news. Closes a story that's gone on for decades. And affirms Yoko Ono's claim to this watch. It's got sentimental value, historical value, all wrapped up in one. Talk about a timely deep dive, huh?
Remember that inscription? On the back. Get ready, here it is. Just like starting over, love Yoko. 10 Nushi 1980 New York Sea.
You're kidding! That's from John Lennon's last album, Double Fantasy, right? Came out just weeks after he got the watch. The title track, just like starting over, it was all about renewed love, creativity for them.
It's unbelievable. This inscription, it's like it turns the watch into a symbol
Yeah.
of their love, John's artistic comeback before, well,
Adds another layer to the whole journey.
totally. So the watch is legally back with Yoko Ono. What happens now?
The big question, right? Keep it in the family, pass it on to Sean. Or option it off, maybe set a new record.
Experts are saying it could be worth tens of millions of dollars, even more than Eric Clapton's platinum Patek Philippe $24.99. That one sold for a fortune back in 2012. John Lennon's watch breaking records.
Hard to say for sure. The value comes from its history, its rarity, how much collectors want it.
Amazing, a watch, a window into history, culture, relationships, all in one.
Yeah.
But for you, what's the most captivating part of all this?
It's how personal it is and historical, It's not just some Patek Philippe off an assembly line. This was worn by John Lennon at a key moment in his life. It's like a thread connecting us back to him. And that inscription, it's like even more powerful. Love for Yoko, a peek into their world.
It's true. And then it's stolen, gone for over a decade, pops up again so dramatically.
Like something out of a movie. Yeah, you couldn't write this stuff. Mystery, intrigue, big legal battles, a touch of rock and roll. It's got it all.
I'll admit, this whole deep dive, it's opened my eyes to these high-end watches, the passion these collectors have.
It's a whole world. They're not just telling time, they're works of art, these watches. Machines made so carefully, they hold their value, each one with its own story. Passion and investment, that's for sure.
And it's amazing, this one object, this watch, shows us history, culture, relationships, all those things.
You got it. It's like a reminder that the things around us, they're not just things. They hold memories. They show us what we care about. Sometimes they take us on journeys we never expected.
We've been on a journey for sure with this deep dive. Anything else for our listeners to think about as they go about their day?
I'd say, look around you. Really look. What are the stories around you? What connections? You might be surprised you could be surrounded by hidden treasures with amazing stories just waiting.
Love that. And if anyone's as fascinated by watches as we are now, after all this, check out those watch blogs. Houdinki, Watches in Rome, great places to start exploring.
It's a world full of history, craftsmanship, real passion. You might just find a new obsession.
Well, that's all the time we have for part 1 of our John Lennon Patek Philippe deep dive. We'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll get even further into this incredible story. Until then, keep exploring, keep an eye out for those hidden stories, and remember, sometimes the most valuable things, well, they're not really things at all.
It really makes you think about the ethics of it all, Was Mr. A really clueless, or should he have, dug deeper into the watch's history before buying it?
Yeah, I mean, you'd think with a purchase that big, you'd be extra careful, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about the auction houses, like Auctionata? Were they so focused on the sale that they missed some red flags, maybe?
Possibly, yeah. This whole thing shows how we need more transparency in this world of, high-end collectibles. Got to make sure stolen stuff doesn't just keep circulating.
Makes you wonder what John Lennon would have thought about all this fuss over his watch. He wasn't exactly known for being materialistic.
Oh, totally. Remember all his talk about peace, love, imagining no possessions? That's kind of ironic, right? Something he owned causing this huge legal battle.
Maybe it shows his lasting impact. Even decades later, stuff connected to him is super valuable, sought after.
Could be. It's like his influence goes beyond the music. He's an icon, and these objects, they're tangible links to his life, his message.
But let's get back to the legal stuff. It wasn't a simple case, was it? Yoko not realizing the watch was missing for years. That complicated things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Not reporting the theft right away, it created this weird legal gray area. The Italian collector said he bought it fair and square. No idea it was stolen.
And because the watch went through so many countries, it's not just one set of laws, right?
Exactly. Each country has its own system, and trying to work through those differences, it can be a nightmare, especially with international deals like this.
So Mr. A says he thought the watch was a gift from Yoko to her driver, Karsan. He mentioned this list of Lennon's things made after his death, said it only listed 2 gold watches, a pocket watch Ono optioned in '84, and the 24.99.
Right, so his argument was if Ono gave a watch to Karsan, it couldn't have been the pocket watch because she'd already sold it, so it had to be the Patek.
He also brought up Ono's testimony from the German case where she said she'd given gifts to employees, including a gold watch to Karsan.
But Ono clarified that the watch wasn't the Patek Philippe, but a different, less valuable one. She really stressed the sentimental value of the 24.99, saying it was her personal gift to Lennon, something she would never give away.
In the end, the Swiss court sided with Yoko Ono. They said the Italian collector, even if he thought he was acting in good faith, should have been more careful checking where the watch came from.
It's a lesson for everyone, especially collectors and dealers. When you're dealing with expensive items, especially if there's a chance they have a shady past, you gotta be super thorough. Check the history before you buy anything.
Of course, Mr. A wasn't happy with the decision. He said it was tough on his family, financially and emotionally. He still insists he thought he bought the watch legally and didn't know it was stolen.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that there are real people affected by these legal battles. We tend to focus on the object itself, the money involved, but there are real consequences for people. Financial loss, damage to their reputation, emotional stress. It's more than just about the watch, you know?
It's true. We sometimes forget about the human side of things. But despite being disappointed, Mr. A said he hopes Ono might think about donating the money from selling the watch to charity, saying it would be a good way to honor Lennon's legacy of peace and activism.
That's an interesting idea. Could the watch's value be used for something good? Something that fits with Lennon's ideals? It could turn this whole dispute into a positive thing.
Definitely. So the watch is back with Yoko Ono. What do you think happens next? Family heirloom. Record-breaking auction.
Who knows? I think Yoko Ono will consider a lot of things. How she feels about the watch, the money it could bring, and maybe how she can honor Lennon's legacy.
So many possibilities. It could go to a museum so everyone can see it, or maybe a private collector will add it to their collection. It could even be used to start a charity, like Mr. A suggested, and continue Lennon's work for a better world.
And don't forget, she could just keep it, a reminder of her love for Lennon and his legacy.
Whatever happens, the story of John Lennon's Patek Philippe is a powerful example of how objects can have so much meaning, both emotionally and historically.
Absolutely. It's a story that combines watches, a bit of crime, and the lasting influence of a cultural icon. It's a story that keeps us interested and makes us think about how the value we give to things often goes way beyond their price tag.
It's a story that just keeps unfolding, So as we wrap up this deep dive, what stands out to you as the most, intriguing part of all this?
For me, it's got to be the personal and historical layers, you know what I mean? It's not just any old Patek Philippe. This was John Lennon's during a really important time in his life. It's like a direct link back to a legend.
It really is.
And that inscription on the back, that just amplifies it all, His love for Yoko, a glimpse into their world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the whole stolen, gone for years, reappears out of nowhere thing.
I know, right? Like something out of a movie.
You couldn't make this stuff up.
Total Hollywood drama, mystery, intrigue, those legal battles, and then that rock and roll connection. It's got it all.
This whole deep dive has really shown me a side of high-end watches I never knew about. The passion these collectors have is amazing.
Oh, it's a whole world unto itself. It's not just about telling time for these folks. It's art, These intricate machines, they hold their value. They each have their own story. Passion and investment, it's a powerful combination.
It's incredible how this one object, John Lennon's Patek Philippe, has given us this look into history, culture, even human relationships. It's more than just a watch.
Exactly. It's a reminder that, well, the things we have, they're not just things. They're filled with memories. They represent what matters to us. And sometimes they lead us on these wild adventures we never saw coming.
We've definitely been on an adventure with this deep dive. Any parting words for our listeners before we sign off? Something to, I don't know, maybe spark their curiosity?
Take a look around, but really look at the objects around you. What stories are they holding on to? What connections do they represent? You might be surprised you could be surrounded by hidden treasures, just waiting for their stories to be told.
That's a great thought. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about watches, definitely check out some online resources.
Yeah.
Houdinki, Watches in Rome. Those are good places to start.
Yeah, they're great. There's so much to discover, the history, the craftsmanship. You might just find a new passion.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating story of John Lennon's Patek Philippe. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring. Keep your eyes open for those hidden stories waiting to be discovered. And remember, sometimes the most valuable things, well, they're not really things at all.